Instagram, covering topics such as fake niceness, overthinking, over apologizing, any number of coping mechanisms that we essentially learn to outgrow. Um, Additionally, I have two podcasts. One is Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress. It is a psychology channel that deals with all those topics. And then I have a second podcast called Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. And today we are doing a live on that. Okay. So today we are doing two-part live. The first part is the dangerous assumptions people make in criminal cases. And the second part is why the public gets true crime wrong so often. And if you know, you know, right? So I think it's really important to understand that the criminal justice system has a bedrock of protections to prevent people making assumptions and essentially people being charged with crimes that they did not commit. As it's been said before, it's better that one guilty man go free than an innocent man serve his life in prison or be put to death, because those things, the being put to death, cannot be undone. And so a lot of us don't fully understand how important it is to have those safeguards in place. They keep us all safe. They make sure that people get the rights that they deserve. Now, does that mean that always happens? No. Does it mean that we strive for it to happen? Yes. Additionally, appeals can be a little bit difficult, especially habeas corpus appeals and things like that can be extremely difficult. And so that's why it's really important that our system have safeguards. That is why proof beyond a reasonable doubt is so important and so valuable. And so we need to definitely go with that as well. So it can be extremely difficult to navigate the legal system, which is why attorneys generally kind of have a lockdown on some of that as well. So one of the biggest problems in true crime is that people confuse confidence with correctness. Confidence does not always equal correctness. They're not always the same thing. The louder the opinion, the more people assume it must be true, right? Because the loudest people are the ones that tend to get the notice. And let's talk about confirmation bias, okay? Confirmation bias is when you seek out opinions that are similar to your own. So you're seeking out people who believe what you believe, right? And you decide guilt early. You decide guilt based on what you know, based on maybe the news, based on what people have told you. And so you are seeking out those people to confirm what you feel like you already know, right? And you already feel like you know the person is guilty. And so therefore, you're looking at media sources that talk about all the things that show this person's guilt. And so you interpret everything through that suspicion, which again is the whole meaning of confirmation bias. It could be similar for somebody who is interpreting their innocence, right? They're not looking at anything but proof of the person's innocence because they are convinced that that person is innocent. And so again, They then are interpreting everything through, they've been framed by the police. The police are on a witch hunt, any number of things, right? And so social media certainty. A lot of people behind a keyboard are very certain on things that they may not have the knowledge and the bandwidth to actually explain and know exactly what they're talking about. Similar to elections, a lot of people go into voting and are unaware. They just know the name, and so they vote for that person, which can be a huge mistake. And so ultimately, trauma doesn't look cinematic. So the thing that we have to understand about trauma is that trauma is a very unique animal. It affects different people in different ways. Some people have memory fragmentation, which means that they remember certain aspects of their, let's say there was an assault. They remember certain aspects of their assault, but they don't fully remember other aspects. So it comes at a later time. Something triggers that in the brain. The brain is very interesting in how it actually brings back information, right? And they may have a flat affect, which people tend to think that means maybe they're intoxicated or maybe they were drunk, maybe they're using drugs, any number of things. But trauma is a lot of things to a lot of people. Some people it makes numb, some people it makes talk more than usual. Some people it makes them forgetful. So there are a lot of different avenues of how someone could act. There's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which are some of the nervous system things that can occur. Some people have panic responses. Some people act nervous all the time, right? And so I've covered Jennifer Kessie. If you're interested in a more deeper dive of the case, Jennifer Kessie was the one who disappeared in Orlando, Florida in 2006. Actually lived in Orlando during that time. And she has yet to be found. There is a video of the believed perpetrator. However, every single scene blocks his face with a fence post. Whether that was intentional, whether that was luck, who knows? We still don't know. But we have a photo of him. We just have an absurd face, right? Not dark, not black, not blackened out from stuff, but obstructed is what it was. And Maura Maria, again, who's been missing around the same time frame. She was the West Point student who disappeared. She'd had a lot of issues where she was looking at a potential honor code violation. She was having issues with her boyfriend. Her sister had had some issues. She had wrecked a car, and then she had wrecked a second car. She had indicated to the bus driver who was trying to help her that she had called somebody to get help. Unfortunately, there was no cell service, so clearly that wasn't possible. And there was a very short span of time, and she disappeared, and no one has seen her to this day, which is really sad. So let's also talk about public opinion versus evidence. A lot of people get involved in emotional narratives. They want to set the tone, set the pace. And so body language myths, they look at body language and say, oh, this person must be guilty, or vibes replacing proof. Okay, no court would allow someone to say, this person gives me bad vibes, therefore they must be guilty. Absolutely not, right? And so tomorrow I want to talk about why ethical true crime matters more than ever, because ultimately the stakes are high. And we have to think how we would feel if we were convicted on vibes, right? Or hearsay, or any number of things that you cannot use, or character evidence. That person is a bad person, right? There are exceptions to that, however. So let's talk about ethical true crime versus performative true crime. There's a difference between honoring a case and consuming tragedy as entertainment. Let's talk about the human cost of that. Families will watch coverage. Can you imagine traumatizing the family over and over again? They've already lost their loved one, and here they are seeing some armchair attorney talk about all these things and bringing out the gory details that likely the family may want to avoid. Misinformation. It's so easy to take hearsay as gospel, but there's a reason why hearsay is not allowed in court, right? Unless it meets an exception. Very tight exception. And then online accusations, because everybody knows everything about cases when they're online, right? When they're behind the computer, they're keyboard warriors. And so why sensationalism spreads faster? because there are a lot of people who are engaging in rage bait, the outrage algorithms. People feel like it gets them more notoriety, that gets them more exposure, gets them more attention. However, that comes at a cost because people get tired of that. People get tired of it, right? And they also get tired of the emotional manipulation and the certainty culture because no one can be certain unless they were there, right? So let's talk about what ethical coverage looks like. And on my true crime podcast, Grace and Gavel, I try to be ethical. I try to do what I would want people to do if it was my loved one who was the victim. Use nuance because we cannot speak in certainty because we do not know, we were not there. Use the evidence that is available. Don't make up your own evidence. Don't try to sensationalize things. Allow dignity for the victim and their families. Have empathy and also exercise a heavy dose of restraint because this is someone's family member. This isn't a character-generated character. This isn't a simulation of a person. This was a person who lived. This was a person who loved. And this person deserves to be treated with all the respect that they deserve. Victims are not characters. Families are not content. So, in closing, true crime should never lose sight of the humanity at the center of the story. Thank you for tuning in to Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. My name is Buffy. I'm an almost 18-year criminal defense attorney, and I have a podcast on YouTube. Feel free to like and subscribe if you'd get some value from this, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.